Good evening. My name is Ryan. Thank you for joining our live interactive telephone town hall. We are hosting tonight's event to give Congresswoman Spanberger the opportunity to hear directly from you and answer your questions about the issues facing Virginia's families, seniors, and economy. As I mentioned, this event is an interactive forum. Congresswoman Spanberger will be taking as many questions as she possibly can during this event. If you have a question, you can press *3 on your phone's keypad at any time. Again, *3 will get you in line to ask a question. You'll be placed in line to speak with a member of the staff. They'll take down your name and where you're calling from. And the next time you hear your name, you'll be live on the call, and you'll be able to ask your question directly to the Congresswoman. You can also ask a question by submitting one through the portal below our online streaming player at spanberger.house.gov. Again, that is spanberger.house.gov/live is the live stream broadcast. spanberger.house.gov/live. If you are watching on Facebook Live tonight and wish to ask the Congresswoman a question, we encourage you to visit that online streaming portal so you can submit your question on the interface. Additionally, if you would like to receive updates from our office via email, please press *6 on your phone's keypad at any time. Again, *6 to sign up for the newsletter, *3 to get in line to ask a question. We might receive a lot of questions during the event, so if we're not able to address your question, please call our district office at 703-987-2180 during normal business hours. Again, if you have any questions throughout the event, press *3 on your phone's keypad or just type them below the streaming player. Now please welcome Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger.
Good evening. I'm Abigail Spanberger, and I am proud to represent Virginia's 7th District in the U.S. House of Representatives. Thank you so much for joining tonight's event. I hope you are staying warm and enjoying a wonderful holiday season. These town halls are a good opportunity to hear directly from you about your ideas, your challenges, how you believe we can work together to get things done for Virginia, and it's an opportunity for me to answer questions that you might have. Here in Congress, I have been busy working for the 7th District of Virginia. And while there is so much going on throughout the world, and I anticipate we'll talk about that throughout the course of the evening, I want to make sure that you heard a major announcement of something that's happening right in the center of the 7th District. Last week, we made a major announcement about infrastructure in the 7th District and across the Commonwealth. Last Thursday, I helped announce that we are going to get $729 million in rail investments coming to Virginia, thanks to the bipartisan infrastructure law. This investment will support the completion of a new long bridge across the Potomac River connecting DC into Virginia. It will also lay a critical third track along sections of the corridor in Prince William, Stafford, and Spotsylvania counties, right through Virginia's 7th District. This project will help expand both Amtrak and VRE rail services to and from DC through Virginia and all the way down to Raleigh, North Carolina. These improvements will help alleviate current bottlenecks, expand capacity, and improve reliabilities for Virginia commuters and travelers, as well as freight, who use our rail system. This announcement was one of several major rail announcements for Virginia last week, and I am so excited that some of these major investments are coming to our Commonwealth. I was also glad to hear that major investments were announced for the Raleigh to Richmond project, and this is the result of the infrastructure law, and the infrastructure law is now delivering on its promises to our communities across the 7th and across the Commonwealth. And back in Congress, here on Capitol Hill, we continue to be in a situation that we know all too well. In January, we will reach the first of 2 key deadlines for government funding. Unfortunately, each time, and the people of the 7th District are far too familiar, we have pushed government funding through continuing resolutions. But we will come to a funding deadline first in January, then in February on government funding. And so to the many federal employees, service members, government contractors, and their families on this call, please know that I am working tirelessly to ensure that we fund the government on time, that we avoid a senseless government shutdown that I know hurts families and people. And and businesses and our overall economy. Just one last reminder before we go to questions. If you or a loved one is having any issues with a federal agency at this time, please be in touch with our office, 703-987-2180, or you can go to spanberger.house.gov, and we'll make sure that we can provide assistance with the federal agency. Thank you so much for joining this evening, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Congresswoman. Tuck, we're going to get right to you on the phone in just a moment, but we'll make one more announcement for those that just joined us. As a reminder, this forum is interactive and we want to hear your questions. If you have a question, you can press *3 on your keypad at any time to get in the queue to ask a question. A member of Congresswoman Spanberger's staff will collect your question. You can also ask a question by submitting one through the portal below our online streaming player at spanberger.house.gov/live. So spanberger.house.gov/live. If you're watching it on Facebook Live, go over to spanberger.house.gov/live in order to submit your question. And again, if you're on the phone, just press *3. All right, Tuck, you are live with the Congresswoman. Go ahead with your question on Ukraine.
Thank you. Congresswoman, I respect you. I didn't vote for you, but you're an American, and I respect that. I would like to know what we're doing for Ukraine. I think Virginia is laying flat, but Ukraine needs weapons. What are you doing in that department? Over.
Sir, thank you. And I'm going to gather perhaps from the fact that you ended your question with over that you are a veteran. And so I want to thank you for your service and certainly thank you for your question. You are absolutely correct. The plight of the Ukrainians is extraordinarily important. They need our weapons. They need our support in order to be able to fight for their own democracy, in order to be able to fight for their own freedom, and to uphold democratic values. I have, since the very earliest days of the Russian invasion, been a strong advocate for us, the United States, to provide to Ukraine what is necessary for them to be able to win this war. And that is a variety of lethal aid, communications aid, humanitarian aid, and support to their strategy and intelligence efforts. At this juncture, we are at a point where we must pass a supplemental bill to provide additional aid to Ukraine. I will vote for it 5 minutes from now. I would vote for it 5 days from now, the minute that it is brought to the floor. The challenge that we are facing here on Capitol Hill is that we cannot yet get it to the floor. Some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle want to include a requirement that in order to provide aid to our Ukrainian partners, aid to our Israeli allies, humanitarian aid for the Palestinian people caught in between the fight between Hamas and the Israeli army, that we must also provide support to our border. Now, let me be very, very clear. I support all of these things, but right now we are tied up in debates about changing border policy, which, let me also be clear, we must modernize our policy related to how we handle our border. We must ensure that our Border Patrol agents have what they need, both in terms of resources and technology. We have to modernize our immigration system. These things are all true, but the challenge is that the immediacy of the need on the ground in Ukraine is so urgent, and we must move forward with support to our Ukrainian partners. And let me just add that we are not in this alone in supporting Ukraine. We are joined by our partners across the world, and particularly our partners in Europe, including NATO and non-NATO countries. In fact, it's the war, Russian aggression into Ukraine, that has actually engaged the Swedes and the Finns in their desire to join NATO, to be part of the project of protecting democracy. And so the United States has been a leader, but we have not been the only ones supporting our Ukrainian partners. And so as Americans, I think that's important when we look at the support that we are giving, that people recognize that. So Puck, the bottom line is I will vote to provide assistance to Ukraine the minute that bill is brought to the floor. We are not supposed to be on Capitol Hill next week or the week after voting. It is my urgent hope that if we don't vote on this tomorrow, which it's not looking likely, I hope they'll call us back because frankly, while I look forward to the Christmas festivities with my family, it is of the most vital importance that the United States provide support to the brave Ukrainian men and women who are fighting for their own freedom. And this is in the United States' interest as well. It is our efforts in defense of democracy. It is also in our interest to defeat Vladimir Putin and his efforts to spread authoritarianism and to invade sovereign democracies, and for us to provide weapon systems to enable that while the Ukrainians do the fighting. It is a contribution to that overall effort that I think is a vital one. So thank you for the question. And apologize I went a little long with that answer. I'll try to be more concise in the future. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Tuck, and thank you, Congresswoman. Next, we're going to go to Max out of Stafford. Press *3 if you just joined the broadcast. If you're on the phone, on your phone's keypad, *3 will get you in line, and *6 if you would like to sign up for the newsletter with your email. So *3 on your phone, *6 if you'd like to sign up with your email. And Max, you are live with questions about Social Security. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Congresswoman, for taking my question. My question is the sales tax on Social Security. When it was first implemented back in the 1980s, that adjusted gross income hasn't changed with inflation, and more people are paying taxes on their Social Security that they receive. Is there anything in Congress that would address and adjust that to inflation?
Sir, let me just clarify your question. So it is the Social Security payment or your Social Security that you are paying on your income?
It's the Social Security that I currently receive. Every month,
Okay.
federal tax is withheld from it. And then depending on where my income falls, I'll either pay 50% or 85% tax on that money. The amount has never been adjusted since it was implemented back when President Reagan was in office. And I'm just curious if there's anything in Congress to address that.
So thank you for this question. In terms of, I'll give two answers. One, certainly we have implemented through prior appropriations increases for Social Security cost of living. Your specific question, I'm not sure if you are talking about the GPO, in which case I could definitely dive into this one because I'm trying to repeal that. But the way that you characterized it, sir, I haven't gotten this question before. So I'm going to make sure that my team has your contact information and we'll follow up. If what you're talking about is the GPO, which is the government pension offset, I co-lead the bill to repeal it. We've got more than 300 co-sponsors, and we are working to get that done this Congress. But I want to make sure that if that's not the specifics of your question, that we can follow up specific to your circumstance. And so I'm gonna, if somebody from my team can make sure that we've got Max's information, we'll follow up specific with him.
All right. Next, we're going to go to Kevin. Kevin has a longer question here. We'll bring Kevin live and then let him ask it directly.
Great.
Hi, thank you for taking my question, Congresswoman. I was wondering if you're aware of the issues going on at the postal hub down in Richmond, Sandston, as far as mail taking an incredibly long amount of time and mail getting lost even, uh, particularly recently. And I understand in the Richmond area, they've had a lot of problems even getting their mail, and it just seems to be a black hole of late. Are you aware of that?
Actually, Kevin, I am very, very aware of this. And let me just give you a couple comments on this and let you know what it is I'm doing. So I started to hear a lot from constituents concerns related to mail delivery being late. They were missing bill payments, so even not mail arriving at their house, but bill payments that weren't received at the place that they were trying to pay their bills. So as we were seeing this uptick, we decided to send out a survey just to see if the challenge that some were facing might have been, pretty local or if it was pervasive. And what we found is we got more than 1,300 individual responses. This is just last week. 1,300 individual responses with people providing very specific stories of how they've been impacted, medicines not being received, again, bill pay not making it to the destination, and really significant impact. So yes, I am aware of these challenges that people are facing. And in addition, I also know that the Postal Service, at choice made, not with local letter carriers or local distribution center employees, not the folks who are doing the hard work, but the Postal Service with Postmaster General DeJoy made the decision that they are not going to be plussing up as they historically have in years past during the holiday season. And so I have significant concerns. Already, we know this is a substantial problem with delayed mail that doesn't arrive on time. I will say in my circumstance, actually, we had a package that we were expecting that ultimately arrived, but what should have been a quick package ended up taking about 3 weeks to get to my home. And my concern is that what is already a overstretched and clearly a system that is facing challenges is only going to get worse once we add, as we are kind of flowing into the holiday season, everything from Christmas cards and holiday cards to packages. And so just today, I sent off a formal letter inquiry to the postmaster, highlighting the concerns that I have, the very specific challenges I'm hearing from constituents, and asking for very real answers. What is ultimately causing some of these delays? A number of years back, I toured Sandston because we were facing some of these challenges, and some of the issues were some machines were getting taken offline. If that's happening again, I want answers on that. But I also want the postmaster to explain how it is that they're going to plan for how we're going to respond during this holiday season if they are not going to be kind of responding, recognizing that these peak hours will require more in terms of processing and distribution planning, the work of our letter carriers. And again, a big concern of mine is also I represent many people who work for the post office who do the good work of delivering our mail and getting packages to us. I want to make sure that they have the resources, and whether it be additional holiday staff, to be able to do the job that they love to do and that they're proud to do. So Kevin, I hear you on this one. If there's more specifics related to the challenges that you or loved ones facing, I welcome the specifics of your circumstance, but I am very well aware of this challenge and certainly very focused on it.
Okay, now we're going to switch gears and take an online question that I'll ask. And remember, if you're watching the broadcast, you can submit your name and question right beneath the player. And if you're on the phone, *3 will get you in line to ask a question. All right, so here's a question, Congresswoman, from John. He says, I think Congress should amend Medicare to include hearing aids, vision, and dental benefits. More of a statement, but what are your thoughts?
I would agree with John. Sorry, I'm a note taker for those who are watching on the live stream. His question was adding hearing, dental, and vision to Medicare. I have previously actually voted to do just that. We weren't able to get that legislation to move in the Senate, but I have voted for that. And let me just give a very quick reason why. We know that hearing and hearing loss is a strong indicator of someone's heightened sense of isolation and loneliness. And so when we're looking at mental health challenges and dementia related challenges in people who are aging, losing the ability to hear can absolutely contribute to those circumstances. And dental health is foundational to our overall medical health and health. So it's extraordinarily important. And ultimately, it is good to keep people healthy, engaged in the community, able to hear, see, and maintain their dental hygiene. So I previously voted for it. I will every chance I get. And ultimately, this is a change in the law that needs to get to the president's desk.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, John, for that question. Next, we're going to go to Bob. Bob has a question about the border. Bob, you are live with Congresswoman Spanberger.
Yes, thank you. Oftentimes when speaking about the lack of border security we have these days, politicians like to say we need to revamp our laws, as you just said previously. Instead of letting millions and millions of people in, what law needs change that would stop that? He likes to talk about technology, but it seemed that it was working before. I don't know what changed. Are you just going to say allow citizenship for all these illegal immigrants? Because we did that in the 80s and it failed then too.
So Bob, I'm going to say that there's actually quite a few laws that need to be changed or updated, or even kind of provisions in how we execute on laws need to be updated. I would say the current system is broken, and it hasn't worked in a while, in quite a few years. And so maybe it ebbs and flows and it's broken or more broken. But in any circumstance, Congress must, and I advocate for this, I'm a co-sponsor of a bill called the Dignity Act, which is a mix of immigration reform and border security reforms. So, but your question was, what laws would I change? So let me just give you a couple examples. We need to revamp the asylum process. The asylum process is not working. We need to adjudicate asylum filers much faster. And that requires changing the laws of what is expected of our system in terms of how someone goes through the asylum process. It is important that people be able to file for asylum, but under our current system, people file for asylum, they enter the United States, and many years later, they might have adjudication that yes, they are eligible for asylum, or no, they are not. The reality is during that time period, people have lives, they create a life here in the United States. And it's important that we be much faster for two reasons. One, if someone is going to be turned down, then they should be returned to their country of origin. And if they're going to be accepted for asylum, they need to have that processing, right? Another issue or law that needs to be changed within our immigration system. Right now, we do not have a farm workforce program that is meeting the needs of farmers and producers. And what I mean by that is we do not have enough farm H-2A visas. And so these are the visas that allow farmers across Virginia, and certainly across Virginia's 7th District, to be able to apply for the ability to sponsor X number of seasonal workers to come work their crops. They're a vital part of the workforce. This program is one where people will come for the growing season, they'll return back home, and ideally they'll come back the next year. We do not have enough visas for that program. It is frankly too cumbersome and difficult for, if a worker does a great job at John's farm and John wants to bring him back next year, that is far more complicated within the system than it needs to be. And so there's a bill called the Farm Workforce Modernization Act that I've previously voted for, passed with significant bipartisan support, that would reform this. When it starts on the border security side of things, the use of technology, the ability for us to scan vehicles, to look for fentanyl, to look for other types of drugs is extraordinarily important. The use of detection devices, fentanyl in particular, it is so potent in such small amounts that I have a bill called the Power Act that would allow for on-the-spot detection of fentanyl or fentanyl-laced substances. This allows for law enforcement at the border to be highly reactive in the moment. And currently we don't have they are not able to be as highly reactive in the moment as I think they should be able to be. So this is just a couple examples, but across the board, the system is broken, and we have an obligation to fix it. I would point to this bill that I mentioned. It's sponsored by a Democrat from Texas and a Republican from Florida, and they put together a really important piece of bipartisan legislation that I'm supporting because it gets at many of the laws that need to either be updated, revamped, or put in place in the first place.
Okay, thank you. Just as a reminder to everyone on the phone and watching the broadcast, the forum is interactive and we'd love to hear your questions. Obviously, we've been going back and forth with the Congresswoman for a while now. Next, we have Glenn. But before we bring Glenn live, press *3 on your phone's keypad. If you're on the phone listening, *3 will get you in line to ask a question. And then if you're watching the broadcast at spanberger.house.gov/live, you can enter your name and your question below the streaming player. All right, with that said, let's go to Glenn. Glenn, you're live.
Thank you. Congresswoman, I know your position on reproductive rights. You've been a great champion to that. Given what we're seeing taking place right as we speak in Texas with that poor woman, 31-year-old woman who wants desperately to have a child, her body has betrayed her, and she got an initial court order allowing her to get the abortion. The Attorney General there said, no, we're not going to allow that, petitioned the Supreme Court in Texas, and the Supreme Court overturned. Given the things that Governor Youngkin had planned, if he were to have increased his House and Senate leadership, and I know you're running for our governor in the next election. What are the things that you plan to do to protect women's rights in the state of Virginia?
Glenn, thank you very much for this question. I'm going to start with a strong caveat, which is I am in my congressional office and I am calling you as your congressional representative. So I can't speak to things I would do in the future in any other role, but I can speak to my stance on this issue, what I've done at the federal level, and the way that I look at the ongoing threats to women and to reproductive rights. You mentioned the woman in Texas, and unfortunately, tragically, horribly, her circumstance demonstrates that threats are ongoing and that the stakes are so extraordinarily high. Here's a woman who is a mother. She wanted to be a mother again, and her pregnancy has not only threatened her life and her fertility, but she has been told by doctors that her baby will not, that her pregnancy is not viable. And the fact that there is a judge who has said essentially through these rulings that he knows better than her doctor, or that there are legislators in Texas who took away the conversations that she could have with her doctor and took away her options because they think they know better about what is right for her than she does or than her doctor does, I think demonstrates the severity and the reality of how dire and grim things are. At the federal level, I have supported the Women's Health Protection Act. I have voted for it when we brought it forth in the last Congress. I am a co-sponsor of this legislation. Again, I am a mother to 3 wonderful, healthy daughters, and I had 3 pregnancies that, with their ups and downs, were ultimately healthy. And I want to ensure that the decisions for my daughters or for this woman in Texas or for any other woman are based on science and fact and what is important to protect that woman's life, and that those decisions should be left with a woman and her doctor. And it is not up to me or any other politician here on Capitol Hill or in Richmond to dictate the choices for another woman, because they have dire, dire consequences. And I will continue to push back against any politician anywhere in Virginia, on Capitol Hill, any place else that want to dictate the decisions for women.
All right, next we are going to go to Cheryl. Remember also, I didn't say this last time, but if you press *6 on your phone's keypad, you can sign up for the Congresswoman's newsletter with your email address. You'll speak to one of her staff members. So that's *6 on your phone's keypad. And then, of course, *3 will get you in line to ask a question. All right, Cheryl, you are now live with Congresswoman Spanberger. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, Congresswoman, and thank you for meeting with us today and this evening. I am a federal employee, and so I am sworn in for my work to be a trustworthy employee every day. And it is so disheartening when I look on the news and I see the ethics, the integrity, and the character of our nation's leaders, from the Supreme Court to former presidents to senators and congressmen who are in office, and they are liars intentionally for their own power gain. They cheat. They just have a lack of integrity. My question is, what is Congress doing, or are they planning to revamp policies and laws that will hold our people in public service accountable for their disruptive behavior? Because it's not just affecting them. This is these actions that are going on. Even a former president who has been twice impeached, and we know that he is involved in a lot of illegal behavior, and yet he has the audacity to still run for president again. And unfortunately, there's people who agree with that. But what is Congress considering to do to put policy procedures and guidelines or even laws in place to stop folks who have a lack of integrity, to get them out quickly and swiftly out of their positions? Because I know, as a federal employee, if my clearance, if I don't follow, or if something is adverse that falls in my background, I will be gone immediately. And so I'm just wondering, what are our leaders in Congress and the Senate doing? What policies and laws are they putting in place to keep these crooked folks out of office?
I want to begin by agreeing with you that we absolutely need to raise expectations for what is expected of our behavior. I'm a former federal employee as well, and I know exactly what you're talking about. The sorts of malfeasance or even just perceived bad behavior that exists among some of my colleagues would absolutely be enough to get security clearances yanked, or someone pushed out of public service. And really, this job, being here on Capitol Hill, is the quintessential public service. I serve all of you. I work for all of you. I am answerable to all of you, and it is an honor, and hopefully one that I pay ample respect to every day. So I wanted to begin by agreeing with you. I'm going to give a couple examples of work that I am doing. And then I would note that we are not moving it fast enough in Congress. Your question is, what is Congress doing? I would say Congress is not moving fast enough. One positive step in the right direction, though please be very clear, I am hardly saying that this is the sort of height of responsibility, but we did expel one member of Congress who had multiple indictments and was a serial liar. So that is the very, very minimum. Those are the bells ringing related to the floor, if anyone hears on the background. Let me tell you about two legislative efforts. One is the Justice is Blind Act, of which I am a co-sponsor, and this is an important bill of reforms for our courts, or for our Supreme Court, because as you mentioned, there are behaviors that, if not wholly unethical, appear unethical. And when we are talking about the highest court in the land, they should be perfect in the way that they comport themselves, in the way that they live to the highest standard, so that in any decision they ever make, the American people, whether you agree with the decision or disagree with the decision, can never, ever doubt if there was some sort of ulterior motive or some sort of ulterior reason why they might have voted a particular way or ruled a particular way. For members of Congress, among the many reforms that I think would be important to the House of Representatives and the United States Senate, it would be for us to not be allowed to trade in individual stocks. Right now, members of Congress can be in a briefing, leave that briefing, call their stockbroker. Now, actual insider trading is not legal for us, obviously. However, we receive information, we receive briefings, we have access to information that is not common out in the public. And in order to help restore the trust that the American people should have in us, I think it's extraordinarily important that members of Congress be banned from trading individual stocks. If we're going to save for retirement with a TSP or a 401k, fine. But we should not be voting on a bill that will impact a particular sector and then the next day buying or selling stocks in that sector. We shouldn't be meeting with CEOs and then buying or selling the stocks of that particular company. So those are two efforts, one focused on the Supreme Court and one focused on Congress in the areas of reforms, because I think that the point that you raised is so extraordinarily important. It isn't just about ethics reforms within Congress. It is also about ensuring that people believe that anytime I take a vote, you may like it, you may dislike it, but it's important that nobody ever think, oh, that's influenced by her stock portfolio. This is why I lead this effort in Congress. It's absolutely bipartisan in its support. It is also bipartisan in its opposition. But I'm going to continue to work to get it over the finish line and signed into law, because I think it's just an incredibly important foundational reform that would demonstrate that we come here to serve our constituents and not a stock portfolio.
Okay, thank you. As a reminder, press *3 on your phone's keypad to get in line to ask a question. *6 to sign up for the newsletter with the Congresswoman with your email. All right, next we're going to go to Nicole out of Woodbridge. Nicole, you're live with the Congresswoman. Go ahead.
Good evening, Congresswoman Spanberger. Hello.
Hi, Nicole.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing fine. Thanks for joining.
Okay. My question is this. I live in Woodbridge, Virginia, within Prince William County, and I recently had to file a claim for disability through the Office of Social Security due to a medical reason. And I unfortunately discovered that the local office that services all of Prince William County and Loudoun is currently backlogged by 7 months. So when I went into the office, I actually spoke to management because I had inquired with your office whether or not anything could be done. And I relayed that information to them, and I said, before I put in an official inquiry, I want to know what you all need as far as help is concerned. And to my amazement, they welcomed it. If anything could be done at either your level or locally, if we can find some sort of solution to get them the type of assistance that they need to in order to eliminate this type of backlog, they would highly welcome it. So my question is whether or not a meeting of some sort could be could possibly come about, with yourself and local officials, within Prince William County.
Well, Nicole, I want to begin by saying that I greatly appreciate that in the course of going through the process of your own filing for benefits related to your circumstance, that you're also concerned with everyone else who might be facing the same delays. So thank you for asking them what they need, and thank you for bringing it to me. And so I'm going to have a two-part answer here. The first is related to your particular claim. Please, and this goes for anyone else who might be listening, I definitely want to ensure that my team follows up with you. We would love to do an inquiry on your behalf, or anyone else who might have a challenge with any federal agency or making a claim. Please be in touch with my office. So, Nicole, that's part one. We would love to assist you with your particular claim. And then part two, related to the office and the delays that they're facing. I would absolutely love to be in touch with the folks over there to identify, where their challenges are, if it's localized to Prince William and Loudoun or regionally, or if it's indicative of larger problems that might be impacting others in other places. So thank you for bringing this to our attention, and certainly I hope that we can help you very quickly, but hopefully through that, we'll work on making sure that we identify some of the challenges that the offices are facing and work to get those remedied.
Congresswoman, we're going to go to an online question from Stephanie. Stephanie's question is, what are we doing within our nation, but especially within our state of Virginia, about gun violence?
Stephanie, thank you for this question. At the federal level, we passed last Congress the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, which was an important step forward as it relates to preventing gun violence in our communities. A variety of programs are supported, both in prevention, support to law enforcement, support to communities, for gun violence prevention, relatedly for mental health support, but there is much, much more to be done. There are a variety of bills that are introduced in Congress. I am a co-sponsor of them, and we have begun doing what is called signing a discharge petition. In Congress, the party that is in the majority is the party that chooses which bills come to the floor. I am not in the majority party, and unfortunately, most of the folks who want to see some of these bills move forward are not in the majority. So we have taken on the task of signing discharge petitions, which is a way that we can, if we get enough signatures, try and force bills to the floor. The important value here is demonstrating to the majority party that we want to see movement on these bills. Safe storage related bills, magazine capacity limits, because we know that certainly in mass shootings, when higher capacity magazines are used, the lethality of those shootings is greater. There have been multiple instances, recorded examples of when a murderer has stopped to reload his magazine. People have been able to escape. And we know that statistically in shootings where high capacity magazines are used, the number of people who die in those shootings, of course, is much higher. I entered the field of law enforcement as a early professional as a federal agent, and that was during the time of the 1994 what was commonly called the assault weapons ban bill, but also had magazine capacity provisions. And the magazines I carried were marked for law enforcement use only because they had more rounds in those magazines than a civilian would be able to purchase. And so it was during this time period that much of the data that I point to now demonstrated the value of magazine capacity limits. Additionally, we have a bill that's previously passed the House with bipartisan support. We want to bring it back. That would raise the age to buy a handgun. You must be 21. To buy an AR-15, you can be 18. This goes back to when a rifle that someone might have been buying was because they were going to go hunting on the weekend with family members. 18 was the appropriate age for that. 21 for a handgun. But now that we recognize the reality on the ground is it is not a hunting rifle. It's an AR-15 that is being categorized in the same way and allows someone to purchase it at 18. Raising that age to meet the 21-year-old standard is a straightforward reform that has previously passed the House. Again, we're moving on a discharge petition. Separately, at the state level, the General Assembly under the last administration passed some very meaningful reform steps in the right direction. And I know that some of my state counterparts are going to be introducing legislation related to safe storage, related to ensuring, hopefully this will pass, that any firearm that's sold comes with a gun lock as a way of ensuring that people have the means by which to lock up a gun. The fact that in the United States of America, the number one killer of children is gun violence is an absolutely shameful, horrific fact. And some of those deaths occur in communities, on the playground, in school shootings, of course, but they also occur when a kid gets a hold of a firearm that they never should have gotten a hold of. And far too many children do harm to themselves or to a playmate or a sibling when they find an unsecured firearm in the home. And so, Stephanie, I hope that gives kind of an example of what we have done at the federal level, certainly more that I want to achieve at the federal level. But I would just note that my colleagues, my counterparts at the state level are making good progress. And as a mother of 3 school-age children, a former law enforcement officer, somebody who grew up with guns in my household, I know that there are reasonable, important, and meaningful steps forward that we can take to protect our kids and make our community safer.
Thank you, Congresswoman. All right, star 3 to get in line to speak with the Congresswoman. Next, we're going to go to John out of Stafford. We'll go ahead and bring John live.
Good evening, Congresswoman Spanberger. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine. Thanks for being with us, John.
Yeah, we met a while back at my church, but let me get to my question right quick. The judicial system is slowly chipping away at the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. What is Congress doing to protect those acts?
John, thank you for this question. And I would just note for everybody on the line that the Voting Rights Act initially, when it passed with strong bipartisan support. When it was reauthorized over the years, it each time passed with bipartisan support. So historically, while initially controversial and so many people worked so hard and risked so much to get the Voting Rights Act passed in the first place, when we as a nation reached that point, we reached it together. And unfortunately, we find ourselves at a time where we have lost some of that consensus around the fact that the right to vote is a right that is bestowed on every American of a certain age, and it's one that we should respect. To answer your question, what Congress is doing, we have the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, which is an important piece of legislation that is it is a bill that has passed previously in the House of Representatives. It did not pass in the Senate, but I continue to be a supporter of that bill. There's also another piece of legislation, the Freedom to Vote Act, that would have automatic voter registration, allow for online or require that there be online voter registration. It would make Election Day a federal holiday. Certainly at the state level, we have done that. It would ensure that voters across the country have access to at least 2 weeks of early voting for federal elections, including 2 weekend days. Now, we know in Virginia, thanks to the last administration and our former General Assembly, we have 45 days of early voting. And certainly in Virginia, we see that 45 days of early voting mean that more people get to participate. Sometimes we like the outcome, sometimes we don't, but it means that our democracy is strengthened. So this bill at the federal level would ensure that there be 2 weeks of early voting for any federal elections. It would allow for same-day voter registration, again, in those federal elections. And it would make federal minimum standards for how vote by mail and drop boxes are utilized to ensure that any person can request a mail-in ballot. And Virginia has made extraordinary strides. I mentioned the 45 days early voting, the use of provisional ballots for same-day registration. And what we have seen in Virginia is working for people. John, I'll just mention, I was at the polls one day in 2020, and I was talking to a man. It was Saturday voting, and he was telling me that he is a short-haul truck driver. And he said, I'm so excited to be able to vote today. It was an early voting day because he's a short-haul truck driver. And he said, every year on Election Day, I go and I get my route, and I know when I get my route if I'm going to be able to cast my vote that year or not. And he was so happy that with 45 days of early voting, now he would be able to go to work on Election Day, but he had 44 other days, or 45 early days to be able to cast that ballot. And that's what it's about. So thank you for raising this issue. This is legislation that I continue to support and advocate for. And quite frankly, I hope in the future, under a new majority, that we will be able to bring these bills to the floor and see them pass in the House and the Senate and get to the president's desk.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Next, let's go to Mike. Oh, yes, here it is. It's an online question. I'll ask it. Mike says, will Virginia see high-speed rail?
Will Virginia see high-speed rail? I will say, from the infrastructure bill that you heard me mention earlier, we are going to see reliable rail. Some of the movement towards high-speed rail are going to be made at the local and state level, but what I can tell you 100% is the investment of dollars that we are bringing to Virginia. And I mentioned the addition of the third track in Spotsylvania, Stafford, and Prince William counties. That will ensure that our trains are more reliable, that there's additional track space. And so for anyone who chooses to commute or travel via train, that reliability will ensure that those trains go faster and stay on pace. I will also say that we, a couple months back, announced that we had helped bring money to Spotsylvania and Hanover counties for crossing junctures. And so in terms of allowing for our trains to go faster, it is incredibly important that trains know that they can move through intersections. And so at a number of places along our railways, trains have to slow down in the event that there might be a vehicle in their way. And so adding these crossings in this funding was for 3 different crossings, will ensure that we can have vehicle safety and passenger safety for those in cars, but that those trains can easily and readily continue to move through those intersections. And then there's also the S-Line project from Raleigh to Richmond, as well as the new Long Bridge over the Potomac. So these are historic investments that will certainly improve our rail system, our existing rail system, as we move into the future and explore what other type of rail options we might want to bring to the Commonwealth.
Thank you, Congresswoman. We're going to come to the end of our live event this evening, and we wanted to thank everyone on the call for joining us. It was a Virginia-focused telephone town hall with Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger. Again, we appreciate the opportunity to answer your questions. If we weren't able to get to the question this evening, you can call the district office at 703-987-2180 during normal business hours, or go to spanberger.house.gov anytime. So again, thank you, and I'll pass it to the Congresswoman just for some closing remarks.
I want to thank everyone who was with me this evening for participating in the town hall. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for listening. Thank you for joining. And I want to note that over the course of the evening, we talked briefly about Ukraine, about aid to Ukraine. And in that answer, I mentioned border security and investments there. I got a follow-up question there. I also mentioned humanitarian aid to the Palestinian people who were caught in the middle of the fighting between Hamas, the terrorist organization, and the Israeli soldiers. And I mentioned aid to our Israeli partners, particularly for the Iron Dome. And because we didn't get a question on it, I just want to make sure that I speak to the fact that as we are working to get an aid bill through, I am extraordinarily focused on ensuring, as I mentioned in my answer to Puck, aid to Ukraine that is so necessary for their ability to fight back against Russian aggression and their freedom. I am also committed to ensuring that our Israeli partners can protect themselves from the Hamas and Hezbollah rockets that continue to target Israel. And I'm also committed to ensuring that innocent civilians, about 1 million of whom are children, on the ground in Gaza, that they are getting the humanitarian aid and support that we, the United States, our international partners, and others in the region are able to push into Gaza via Egypt. And I'm also keeping in my thoughts and in my focus of work the hostages, including Americans who remain hostages kept by Hamas. I'm a member of the House Intelligence Committee, so I focus on this issue every single day in that work. And to anyone who might be impacted, I thank my constituents, those with family members in Gaza, those with Palestinian family members who are hurting and worried and scared, and certainly those with family members and friends in Israel, and in particular, noting that I've talked to the families of who have hostages held by a terrorist organization. I continue to work on this issue to see resolution, to see an eventual peace, and to ensure that the United States is a helpful partner both to our allies and also to the victims who need humanitarian support. So as we continue to contend with what is a very, very difficult and complicated circumstance, I thank you all for your outreach to my office, for the meetings that I've had, and certainly I thank you all for questions. And so as we look towards the future, I also want to wish everyone who's celebrating Hanukkah, I thank you for joining us this evening. For everyone who is headed towards a happy Christmas and a wonderful Merry Christmas, I wish you the very best. And to all of my constituents, thank you for the honor of serving you. Thank you for the ability to help with constituent services. And And I'm grateful for the ability to serve, and I look forward to doing good work on your behalf into the new year. And to everyone who shared a question, thank you for joining in. To everyone who calls our office, thank you for telling me when you agree. Thank you for telling me when you don't. And thank you for holding me accountable. I appreciate that very much. And I wish you all a wonderful, wonderful holiday season.